Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff. On today's show, we are going to react to ESPN's Field Yates because he dropped a brand new NFL mock draft. Miami obviously holds the 13th pick. We're going to take a look at who was selected ahead of Miami, who was on the board, and who Field Yates ultimately went with, and then break down that prospect. But I want to make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we put out daily content, and here's a little incentive. I will do a full 7-round mock draft from my brain over the next 2 or 3 days on the channel if we get 20 subscribers on today's show. So hit that sub button for more draft content and if you want to see me do a mock draft this weekend. All right, let's get into Field Yates' mock draft now because this is how he went in the first 8 picks, and then we'll look at the next 4 as well. Travis Hunter went number 1 to Cleveland, which was a little bit of a fascinating one. Abdul Carter, number 2. Cam Ward, the Miami Hurricanes quarterback, to the Giants at 3. Patriots go offensive line. You see Mason Graham, Sanders, Mykel Williams, and Jalen Walker round out the top 8. 2 prospects there in Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams I would expect Miami to be interested in, but I probably would project they are both going to be top 10 picks. And the 4 picks right ahead of the Miami Dolphins. Tet McMillan, my personal wide receiver one, heads to the Saints, wide receiver out of Arizona. And then 3 intriguing names here that Miami I could have seen taking at pick number 13. Kelvin Banks, the offensive lineman from Texas. Josh Simmons, the offensive lineman from Ohio State. And Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan. Will Johnson could be the number 1 corner, depends on what you think about Travis Hunter. And I know Miami doesn't really need corner that much, but if he's there at 13, that could be a great best pick available type of guy. But even with these 12 players off the board ahead of the Dolphins, I love this spot. Miami, in this specific scenario, would be able to land a big-time prospect regardless of where they went. They could go offensive line. They could go defensive line. They can go in a blue-chip prospect like Tyler Warren. They can grab a safety like Malachi Starks. Like, the top 10 guys, in my opinion, that would be interested for the Miami Dolphins are really, really good. If you want to go the Eagles route of building up that defensive line, go Shamar Stewart, Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon, Mike Green. You could get the game-changing tight end in Tyler Warren, the need at safety of Malachi Starks, or an offensive lineman like Tyler Booker or Armand Membu. I think this is just a great spot for the Dolphins, and I'll be excited to see who's on the board at 13 when we do the real thing in late April. But with the mock draft sliding the way it has, let me know. Who would you take at number 13? Saw the 12 players off the board. You saw who I think the top 10 players are on the board for the Dolphins at number 13 in this Field Yates mock draft. Who would you want the Dolphins to select? Well, the Miami Dolphins ultimately selected Tyler Booker, the interior offensive lineman. That is who Field Yates had the Dolphins drafting with the 13th overall pick. This is an obvious need for Miami on the interior offensive line, so I am not going to complain about this pick whatsoever. I know there are some probably better positional value, as offensive guard isn't the highest valued position in the NFL, and you don't see them get taken very high in the draft often. They usually get taken around 18, 20, 24 in terms of the best guards available. But with Miami having such a big need on the interior offensive line, I would not complain if they ultimately went with him at 13. Because when you think about what Miami needs, they need a left guard and they need a right guard. And obviously the draft strategy of Miami is going to be very predicated on what happens in free agency. Because if Miami signs 2 veteran free agent guards on multi-year contracts, like a Will Fries, like a James Daniels, like a Will Hernandez, well, then you probably aren't drafting guard in the first round, right? So, to me, it's all about free agency, but as we're sitting right now in left guard and right guard needing to be filled, I do see Booker being someone Miami could target at 13. Field Yates explaining his decision. Simply put, the offensive line must be better in Miami, and that applies to both tackle positions and the interior. The Dolphins were in the bottom 5 in pass block win rate this season, 55.7%. Booker would share up a lot of the interior problems that were created when Robert Hunt left in free agency last offseason. Much like Hunt, Booker is a people mover in the run game. He is on the short list for strongest player in the class and gave up only 1 sack in his entire college career. And though Booker is definitely a guard in the NFL, the fact that he was able to kick out and play 68 snaps as a left tackle in 2024 for Alabama is a testament to his great footwork. And coming up in just a second, I am going to look in depth more on Tyler Booker and how he could fit in for this Miami Dolphins football team. But you see the strong words from Field Yates. He's clearly the top straight up guard in the class. There's a lot of talk about if Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks could slide from offensive tackle to guard. Same with Armand Membu, but strictly an interior offensive lineman right now. It's clear Booker's the top guy, and we're going to talk more about him here in just a second. But I got to show some major love to our sponsor on today's show. That is Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app and platform. And make sure you get started today. It's so easy to play. All you do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stat projections, and you get it to have a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. And I know, football season is over, but All-Star Weekend in basketball is almost here, and Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching your favorite players during the game and the Saturday night events like the three-point contest. They also invite the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. They also have quick withdrawals. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. You can play in so many different ways, daily, season-long projections, football, basketball, baseball, doesn't matter. And I actually have a little bit of a baseball entry right now for season-long. Taking the more of that on Paul Skeen's strikeouts, more than on Tarek Skubal strikeouts, and I also take more than on Jarren Duran home runs from the Boston Red Sox. A little example of how you can play. So join me over on Prize Picks. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Links in the description and comments of today's show. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's get back to Tyler Booker and break him down as an NFL draft prospect, because even though Field Yates actually gave him a lot of credit for how good he was as a run blocker at Alabama, he actually graded out higher as a pass blocker for the Crimson Tide in 2024. PFF, it's not even close. And I think PFF is very good at what they do, and unfortunately, they are truly the only system that has complete grading for offensive line play. It's just hard to judge how they play if you don't watch every single snap unless you use PFF. But him being graded as low as he is a little bit shocking, considering Alabama had one of the best run games in all of football last season with Jalen Milroe and Justin Haynes allowing no sacks. So he's clearly a good pass blocker. But I do think that the run blocking grades are a little bit low for him, and I think it's actually much higher than we originally think. And Booker is someone who is built like a nice, solid, big-time offensive guard. Booker has a solid size. He's got great frame, 6'5", 325, but he's athletic enough, in my opinion, to get out in the perimeter, because we know the Dolphins have a much-needed scheme for offensive linemen to be versatile, to get out on the perimeter, in these sweeps, in these pulls, in these tosses. I think Booker has the athleticism to do that. And when you actually look at his advanced numbers this past season as a member of the Tide, they actually grade out relatively well. And when you think about how many offensive guards in football, some of these numbers might kind of scare you away here. And I know they're not top 10, they're not top 15, but think about this. There's 2 guards. There's what, like 160, 180 Division I football teams? So there's 300 plus guards in college that kind of quantify and qualify for these numbers. He's ranking in the top 80 on all of them. Top 10 in pass blocking grade. He was top 60 in QB hurries, top 70 in pressures. And then when you look at the run blocking game, graded out in zone scheme, important for Miami, 75th, 50th in gap scheme. So to me, I think he's going to be a really good professional. I think he's going to be a starter from day one, be able to put him in at left guard, put him in at right guard. He played left guard at Alabama, but I think he could play either. But obviously Miami having a need at left guard and right guard. If you drafted him, you'd probably just keep him at left guard. He, to me, is someone that makes a lot of sense for the Miami Dolphins at pick 13 in the NFL draft. Well, what say you? Do you like the pick? Would you draft Tyler Booker at number 13, you saw the other 10 players available. You saw the breakdown of Booker as a prospect and what his potential fit is. Let me know. Would you draft him at 13? Type Y for yes or type N for no. When you're asking me what I would do, I would draft Tyler Booker. Now, I will say this, though. And you would be gambling. Yes, there's no debate about that. But the NFL and the draft is all about gambling with these prospects. I think you'd be able to get him if you trade down a little bit. I kind of go into the line of thinking of guards in terms of not being the highest value. And yeah, this is a need for Miami. But if another team wants to trade up to grab a Tyler Warren, to grab a Mike Green from Marshall on the edge, a Malachi Starks from safety, and you were hell-bent on drafting an offensive lineman, well, then you can trade back slightly and then grab either Tyler Booker, 18, 19, 20, or maybe pivot to Armand Membu, maybe one of these other offensive linemen, which is why I'm so excited for the NFL Combine, because there is so much anonymity about who is a guard, who is a tackle. Right now, Tyler Booker is the top offensive guard in the NFL draft class. But by the time the Combine rolls around, you could see Armand Membu from Missouri. You could see Kelvin Banks from Texas. You could see Will Campbell from LSU all get classified by NFL draft scouts as guards because all of them have size concerns at the offensive tackle position. They played offensive tackle at college, but in the NFL against these defensive linemen, they might have to be moved inside for guard, or at least have the versatility to do so. So when we start to see the size, the hands, the length, the wingspan, the reach, and the weights of these prospects, that's when we'll have a full picture of who could slide in and play guard for the Dolphins if they drafted them at 13, which provides Miami a lot of flexibility of maybe trading down and drafting a different guard. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens at the NFL Combine. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Make sure you are subscribed because, like I mentioned, trade rumors, draft stuff, news, we have it all here at Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. And if you're still watching today's show and aren't subscribed, well, you clearly like something we're doing, so join the channel today.